Welcome to the Ask Dad podcast by Soul Bliss Empire with Rachel and Jim. This is the podcast where science meets spirituality, and our mission is to expand consciousness. You have arrived. Hello and welcome back to Ask Dad. I'm Rachel and this is Jim, aka Dad. And tonight we are going to be talking about energy mastery and specifically how it relates to our energy body. And how we're going to start here is with our thoughts. And I'm sure you've all heard the saying, our thoughts create our reality. Well, we're going to go into that in a little bit more depth and tell you what that really actually means, because that phrase is, one, it's cliche, and two, it's like, okay, great. Now, how do I make that happen? And so how the energy works is that we have our thought energy, which is linked to our physical energy, and it's the thought energy. When we are aligned, our thought energy flows through our physical energy, and that's how it creates our reality. So I will get you to expand on that more and really go into depth about how our thoughts create our reality.
Okay. And so I guess the first comment I'll make is that we have a multi-dimensional consciousness. I know there's a lot of discussion in, let's say, mainstream scientific circles of even debating whether there is a consciousness. We're moving on from that. So yes, there is a consciousness. Hello, and it's multi-dimensional in fact, and there can be different parts that make up the whole. Some people have used the analogy of the chakra system and how you have all the way from the root chakra all the way to the crown chakra, and that each energy center would have a slightly different input as to what, let's say, it wants. So if you're talking to your root chakra, it's like, hey, I want to be grounded and I want security, and if you're talking to your sacral chakra, it's like I want connections, and if you're talking to your solar plexus, then you're saying, hey, I need to have power, and all the way on up. And so there's all of these aspects to what we call our personality. So human personality is a very complex thing, and then we can divide and separate that into the idea of each one of those aspects being like an aspect of consciousness. And so when we're talking about consciousness, then we want to talk about how that the mastery of how do we master that? How do we marshal that, right? How do we bring all of those energies together into a cohesive focus is one aspect of energy mastery. I would say the first level of energy mastery is doing that, right? You want to be able to do that first. And that in and of itself is an aligning of the physical body and the energy, or some people call the astral body, and even to some extent the causal body, which would be more in the line of the superconscious and how we conceive of God or high power in the universe, the intelligence of the universe. Yogananda stated that he considers the electrons in our body to be lifetrons. And the distinction that he makes in that is that the lifetrons are electrical energy, but it has intelligence. And so all of the connection that we have, and this is the idea of in terms of talking about energy mastery, is the realization of the connectedness of our energy with the energy all around us. And so that's a key point. And so as we're thinking of that, that just sort of defines the area that we're talking about. We're talking about an intelligent energy that's going through our body. It's conscious, it's making up our personality. And now we want to learn how to, focus that, to marshal that together, to do something that we want to do. Because that's the big thing, is we want to be able to have our purpose, right? We want to have that that focus, that, what is it that, what does life mean to you? Like the meaning, people say, well, what's the meaning of life? Well, the reason I think that's a tricky question is because that's different for different people, right? What does life mean to you? Like, what do you want to do with life, this gift that we have of life? And so that's why we want to learn how to, as much as possible, in every respect that we can, to master this energetic vortex that is us, right? That is our physical body, our consciousness, all those things. So we can, to look at that in a somewhat logical way, we can break it down into 3 areas. So we can have, first of all, we want to be able to clear the energy, sort of an alignment and a clearing. And then we want to have a resonating aspect where we're choosing and sort of doing some of the work. And then we want to be able to have an aspect where we're able to sort of switch gears and get into what is called a flow state, where creativity happens, where we have that, where we're connecting to what Carl Jung calls the collective consciousness, or the collective unconscious, I think he refers to it. But it's that tapping into that energy. There's a field. It's also referred to as a field. It's an energetic field of all human thought through all time. Is an energetic. There's an energetic habit or resonance that's up there, and that's where all artistic inspiration comes from. So you think, well, many times when you talk to artists, they say, well, where did you get this inspiration? It's just like, well, it just dropped on me, right? Just like came out of nowhere, or came out of the ether, which is accurate, right? Coming out of that ether, but it's actually coming out of that resonating habit, which is what Rupert Sheldrake talks about, morphic fields, right? So this is the organization of all of the information, and the energy is basically like a definition of energy would be informational patterns flowing through time. So that's because everything's moving, right? So that's and we want to learn how to corral this, because it'll just move randomly, like nature will just go. But we have the ability to choose, right? To have that consciousness, that where we are the I am, right? There's the I am. If people are familiar with the scriptures, like when God appeared to Moses and he said, and Moses was saying, well, who shall I say sent me? And God said, say, I am sent you. And so it's the I am. So that aspect of ourselves where we can say, I am this, or I am going to do this, or I am. So anything that has that consciousness is God within us. That's the God power. So if we can realize that, then we can start to say, hey, well, that's huge power, right? I have all of the power of the universe is concentrated into what I can say and go, I am, this. I am a successful business person. I am a successful mom. I am whatever I choose to be, right? I can do that. And so that's what we want to focus on. And the first step is the clearing. Now, is there anything that maybe I'll pass it over to you, Rachel? Is there anything you want to mention about the clearing aspect of the alignment of this huge energy vortex that we call human beings?
Yeah, actually, I've been looking at charge and the energy body, and charge just being another name for life force energy, and how often we get it, we tend to get it stuck in our body. And that's the reason we would need a clearing and an alignment to begin with, because I'll just explain briefly how we can get it stuck in our body. So when we have a charge come up in an event, so a stimulus happens, and then we have a charge, and then it should go through a discharge and then a relaxation. So that's called the charge discharge cycle. And we, at one of those stages, we tend to block it because it wasn't safe when we were children to let that cycle fully go through. So for example, if something makes you angry, you have a charge come up and then you need to release it. So maybe as a child, it was by yelling or stomping or screaming or something like that, we were told not to do that. And so we block it at the discharge stage, which is the yelling or the screaming. And so then whenever you get angry, you tend to get that stimulus, the charge, and then you block it before you can then discharge and relax. And so that is what we're talking about when we are talking about clearing. That's the energy that gets actually physically stuck in our body, in our tissues. And that's what we need to clear. So go ahead and speak more on clearing and what we can do with that.
Right. And so one of the techniques that's newly coming up is done by Colette Stryker, and what she calls her MAP program, Making All Things Possible. And she has developed a technique that's a refinement and a kind of an addition to a process done by Dr. Gary Flint. And it's a process whereby she trains the superconscious, so a higher level of the, I would say like a causal aspect of our consciousness, is trained on how to do that clearing and can clear things like fast and in a magical way, really. And so that she has developed this whole protocol of how to do that quickly, easily, very gently, and very effectively. And this is what addresses one of the fundamental blocks that has been identified, again, by Wilhelm Reich with his emotional plague ideas. Plato was talking about it with the human condition, and just how we have this tendency to give up our power and to be directed by whatever reality is given to us, instead of realizing that we are reality making machines, so to speak, and that we can create literally anything. So this is a technique that is coming up, pretty brand new. I would say the last 3 years that she's really put this together, and it's fabulous, and it's state of the art, where the practitioner actually talks to the superconscious and directs the superconscious to do the clearing that has been the blockages, some of the main blockages that have occurred through just the way that we're brought up. And so then that's a different subject of, how to raise children and how to, stop these blocks from happening. That would be a great thing. But of course, before the adults can teach the children, the adults need to experience the clearing before we can go, oh, this is how I should teach the children. And then things will change very rapidly once we can educate the children in how to manage and master their energy. So the next thing I was going to get into was the resonating, so after we've cleared and aligned, see, now we're in a good position, and a lot of this will happen, back and forth, but just if we're thinking of it linearly, then the next thing that would happen was we can resonate. And so that's where we can actually, there's some techniques that we go into in our seminar. We go into the techniques of how to find your true choices. What is it that you really want? What is your purpose? Why are you on this planet? What is it that you have to share? Right? All of these things. This is your purpose, and that's what you want to find out, and that's what you want to, using meditation, we talked about, like the daily habits that we want to create, daily rituals we want to create that help us to be connected and to get focused, to focus our willpower, and to be able to direct that thought energy that is a real energy. And that's without debate, that the thought energy is an energy. And that's been proven for 4 decades by people like Dean Radin, and he's the head of the noetic science. And there's a lot of other people we could mention, but anyway, there's just that idea has been very well documented and scientifically proven, as well as any science can be proven. So that the thoughts, so this is where the science meets the spirituality, is where you want to have, we know that our thoughts can do that. We know that they can resonate out, and they can actually affect the environment around us. And that's a definition of magic. And that's just a natural magic that we want to do. But it does take a little bit, but it does take some, the clearing and the resonating and some daily habitual work because reality does, just the nature around us is difficult to move. It doesn't just move easily, and that's a good thing. Otherwise, our world would just be topsy-turvy, right? So we have to overcome what Dean Radin actually calls reality inertia, which is an interesting concept of how that, what it is around us is kind of like a big boulder. And, once it's hard to get moving, but once it starts to move, then if you keep pushing it, it'll keep rolling, right? So that's what we have to learn to use our energy mastery to create that using our thoughts and all of our conscious aspects of our consciousness to get that process started. Was there anything you wanted to share on the resonating part of it?
Not particularly. I did want to just go back to the clearing when you were talking about the clearing. You just gave one example of something we could do, but there are which I agree with you is the quickest, most efficient way. But you would need to access Colette Stryker's courses to do that, which we can link below if you're interested in. It's definitely something worth checking out. However, there are I believe other ways to do it as well that may be a little bit more accessible, although her stuff's quite accessible, but is through some of the things we teach in our workshop, through when we talk about limiting beliefs and how they are, even just like that awareness of it helps you then be able to do something different with the limiting beliefs. And then the emotional awareness and accessing your observer mode, because then you don't continue giving energy to the beliefs that are limiting you when you are able to become aware of them and then become the observer and then choose again. And we go into that in much more detail in our workshop, which I can also link below. But so yeah, there's just there are different ways, I would say, to the clearing aspect. But I liked the Colette Stryker example for sure.
Right. Well, it's good to bring in that there is ways that we are things that, like you say, being the emotional awareness technique, and some other techniques that can just help you to become more aware and just sort of kind of like on the move when you're on the move, which also helps with mindfulness. We get into a little bit of mindfulness meditation training in our seminar, and that's a really helpful technique, just to be able to, so many times we're programmed, we have a bad feeling, it's like, oh, I've got to block that out, and that's a bad feeling, I can't do that. Whereas if we just go, okay, it's a bad feeling, well, what, let's just sit with that, let it affect me, and where does that, what response do I have to that? And that's it. That's a huge breakthrough when you can create that daily mental habit of moving past some of these obstacles that we just have. It's just part of our human experience.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really good nugget, is to surrender in the energy mastery. Is like, if you do nothing else, if you can surrender to the flow of your feelings and your emotions, instead of judging them or making them mean things, that's a huge step on your way to energy mastery for sure.
Right. Yeah. And so really when we're talking about energy mastery, we're talking about a series of different skills that can be practiced daily. And really the only person that can master your energy is you, right? You have to decide to put those into, realize the benefit of them and put them into a daily practice, and just have, it's something that it's used. It's like a toolkit, right? You've got to open it up, you got to use the tool, and it starts to work for you.
Yeah. And so I want to just again with the resonance, is make that clear, is that is the resonance, is the daily habits, the daily practicing of these tools and skills that we're talking about. That's how you make a resonance in the whole world. And you can relate it to, say, working out. Whereas if you work out every day, 10 minutes a day, you're going to get a lot better results than working out once a week for 2 hours. And so it's that daily practice, the daily habits. It's like ringing a bell. If you do it constantly for a little bit every day, then that bell tone, the resonance is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so that's how I just wanted to sort of bring that very focused for when you were talking about the resonance there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And the resonance makes me think of the analogy of when soldiers there's a troop of soldiers walking over a bridge. They will be ordered to break their step, to break their march, because the resonance of their march will actually bring down the bridge. So
that's how powerful.
Because of course it's not the first vibration of the first thumping of all the men's feet stomping down at once doesn't break it. But as the second one comes, it builds, right? And builds and builds. And before a couple of hundred people march over the bridge, if it, obviously in wartime, things might have gotten bombed a little bit. And there's a great chance just from the constant building of that resonance, the bridge can collapse. So in our life, that's a positive thing, right? We want the bridge to collapse. We want we're hitting the situation with the resonance. We want that boulder to disintegrate right out of our pathway. And it's a positive thing. And it actually, another concept that's really helpful with that is, instead of thinking of the laws of nature, think of it in terms of the habits of nature. And so all of the things that are around us are there because of a habitual resonating force that can look permanent to us, because it's been doing it for millions or billions of years, and it looks like it's just a law, like it's always been there, but it's actually a habit that has gained permanence and power from its habitual use. And so that's why it takes habit to overcome those obstacles. So perseverance is big. And then the last aspect that we wanted to cover tonight was being in the creating aspect of a consciousness. So we can focus our energy into a clearing. I want to clear. We can or allowing the clearing. We want to, and then there's another focusing that we want to focus where we want to resonate, and we want to create that force going out. And then the kind of the fun one at the end is getting into what's called flow, and that's another big subject that's gained a lot of traction and people writing about it. In the last, I would say 30 years, especially getting into the whole idea of flow and peak performance. And of course, that's where we bring in all the athletes, the extreme athletes into the spiritual family. They get it, right? They understand that that's an aspect of our multi-dimensional consciousness can actually get into a flow state. And that's when we tap in to all of the creative energies that are around us, and we can do marvelous things. Like you think about what athletes do is really magic. Figure skaters, I mean, put on a pair of skates and get out on the ice and see how far you get, right? Like what they do is magic, right? It's just magical, or even, and hockey players. I mean, what hockey players do on ice, I mean, skating around, at 30 kilometers an hour and bashing into each other and trying to, maneuver a puck. Like, it's just astonishing. Or, any sport, name a sport, right? It's just astonishing what the human physical body is capable of. Not even to mention the extreme sports like the surfers. I know the surfers get mentioned in the at one time it was doing a 25-foot wave was like the pinnacle of a surfer. And then, within 10 years, a 60-foot wave was routine. And, it just goes on and on in every aspect. Or, poets or musicians, artists, painters, what they tap into and what they're able to do is magical. But that's all done in a state of flow. And so that's the last aspect of energy mastery that I think we're going to address today, was how that's an area that is accessible, and there's and it's just a matter of, again, getting into sitting down and realizing that that's an actual state that you can get into. And even in business, actually, there's like reports where people are 500% more productive in flow states. So I mean, you can work Monday and Tuesday and get as much done as people get in a whole week just by being in a flow state. So that's the goal with energy mastery that at Soul Bliss Empire we're endeavoring to teach and to bring forward the different aspects of it. And and I hope the little talk today has been helpful in inspiring and encouraging people to take control of their own consciousness and to you talk about expanding it or focusing it or whatever adjective, but just working with it in some way is just the whole concept of working with our multi-dimensional consciousness is a revolutionary statement. But basically here at Soul Bliss Empire, that we just want to make that a routine. That's just the staple. That's what we do here. So
yeah, we want to normalize magic.
Yeah, normalize magic. By understanding and being an energy master at that level.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being with us tonight. Like I said before, I will link what we mentioned before with Colette Stryker for her courses and information. And I will also link our workshop. We hold it once a month where we go over mindfulness practice, our limiting beliefs and how they're holding us back, emotional awareness techniques to help us discharge these limiting beliefs. And then we go through a meditation where you get your true choices, which Jim mentioned earlier. And this is where you discover what you truly want and what your purpose in life is. So if you're interested in that, I will link that below too. And always, as always, feel free to connect with us. Our website is www.soulblissempire.com, and you can find us on Instagram at Soul Bliss Empire. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Good night.
Okay.